Hey everyone, I have a time-sensitive announcement to share with you. Earlier this month, LifeSite was hit with another online censorship attack, this time on TikTok, after publishing the truth about the corrupt administration in the United States. In fact, LifeSite is still permanently banned on Facebook, and our main YouTube channel was wiped out, which is why we're only on the John-Henry Westen Show YouTube channel. So this is because the prince of this world hates the truth. And we at LifeSite are committed to bringing you the fullness of the truth, even if the globalists and atheists don't want you to hear it. To help us push forward with our truth-telling mission, I urge you to join us during this special Advent and Christmas season with your prayers and almsgiving. Help us at LifeSite build a culture of life for you, your children, your grandchildren, in the face of massive opposition. By uniting your prayers and your giving with us at LifeSite, you promote our pro-life and pro-family mission of building a culture of life around the world. In fact, when you support LifeSite, I urge you to write a prayer in our comment box. It's a perfect way to infuse your prayer and almsgiving with a charity like LifeSite that you can trust, knowing that we will personally read and pray over all your intentions. We need your prayers and almsgiving now more than ever. We at LifeSite must reach our end of the year fundraising goal, and we have no corporate sponsor, which makes LifeSite's grassroots support from people like you miraculous. So please, as you listen to today's interview, click in the donation link at the top in the description of this video and offer your almsgiving and prayer to LifeSite News. This is the moment we need all of our viewers, even first-time viewers. Join the mission for life, faith, family, and freedom with LifeSite. Join us now with a financial gift of any amount by clicking the first link in the description below and be a force for good in the world. Also, don't forget to pray with your financial gift. Every little bit helps. So thank you, and may God bless you.
We're turning the child into a commodity, and the child is always a gift. And the difficulty about a gift is that we cannot force it. And it's terribly hard to understand, why sometimes this is not working out. But we're not doing anybody any favor by sort of forcing it and thereby actually sinning grievously against the child. Even though, once the child is there, of course we should love it. And I'm sure that lots of IVF parents are wonderful parents, leaving aside the nature of the conception. I think the real kind of medical method that should help them is one that helps them have a child naturally, not replace them, which is what IVF is doing.
There has been an explosion of infertility of late, and that trend looks like it's going to continue. You ever wonder what you're supposed to say with two people experiencing infertility, or what you can do if you are? Well, we've got an expert with us, someone who both has experienced infertility for some 9 years of her marriage, and she's now got a child, but she's a doctor of philosophy as well. She's just released a book. It's called When Expecting Doesn't Happen, Turning Infertility into a Journey of Hope. This is the John-Henry Westen Show. Stay tuned. Dr. Marie Meaney, welcome to the program.
Thank you. So good to be here with you, John-Henry.
Let's begin as we always do at the sign of the cross. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Ghost. Amen.
Amen.
So, Marie, I've actually known you for many, many years, but it's been many years since we've been able to speak. You've now written this book on infertility. Tell us, what led you to write this book, and what are your, what motivated you to bring it out right now?
We suffered from infertility for many years. Once we got married, we weren't expecting any problems, and it hit us as a big surprise that it was difficult. And it also surprised me at how painful it was. I didn't expect it to be so heart-wrenching. Now, not everybody experiences it as badly as that. There are basically 3 groups of people, though, who those who don't mind at all, those for whom it's, it's a suffering, it's a burden, and those who are absolutely crushed by it. And I was one of them. And I know a lot of other people who are also crushed by this thing. So it's nothing unusual. And though my husband and I always accepted the teaching of the church and found it, very helpful, I felt that there's nothing to help me just getting day by day by day through this with not knowing whether we'd ever have children. And I thought I wanted to write something for couples to help them, give them a sense that what they're going through is not unusual, and they're not going crazy, that this is really difficult. Also avoid the kind of dead ends that I ended up in while trying to do the best thing, of course, and also helping friends and family, because often those surrounding the couple suffering from infertility don't know what to do or say and end up doing and saying exactly the wrong thing. So I made one chapter in that book is addressed to them, and will hopefully help them navigate these difficult waters.
Definitely. And I think, especially since we hear the numbers of people experiencing infertility is going up, we want to be ready for this because this is happening. A lot of people are already in the situation. And maybe we can start with, what do you say? Because that's a great challenge. And I know oftentimes people trying to be helpful can say some things that are nonetheless very hurtful.
So what to say and do as a friend or family member is what you're asking. Well, first of all, don't feel that you have to bring up the topic. Actually, do not bring up the topic. At most, you can say, if you're close, I just want to tell you that I'm here for you if ever you want to talk about it. And don't get any further than that. Even if you have up your sleeve some great medical method, or you think you just have the right word for that person, better not to say anything. It's so painful. So many people are already talking to one about it, and one just wants a little bit of peace and quiet. The other thing is, once you get into a discussion, if the couple or one of the spouses opens up to you, don't feel like you have to fix it, because you can't. Of course, you want to help the other person. You love to get them from the cross. And in all likelihood, nothing that you will say will do that. There is probably no easy fix, medically speaking, and you can't just sort of say something that will make the couple sort of skip and dance away and say everything is fine. So, and finally, in terms of another big no is, don't be curious for the reasons of infertility. It just feels very yucky to have people approach you and wanting to figure out, is it you? Is it your husband? Is it, what's going on? As a fourth note, at the same time, don't feel like you have to walk on eggshells, which is more easily said than done. But the main thing is that can carry you through this is a key term, and that is compassion. Compassion, which comes from pati, to suffer, and this is suffering with. So what can you do when people are suffering tremendously? That is valid for all kinds of suffering, is being under the cross with them, like the Blessed Mother and St. John. And that means not being able to do much, but just being there. And you know what? Being there and not trying to fix it is tremendous, because it means you can let go, you can confide, you feel the warmth of love, you feel you can just unburden yourself. And somebody else is just there to say, I am so sorry. I am so sorry you are going through this. And we know from the book of Job that his friends are doing the wrong thing when they come and basically tell him why he is suffering. That's another thing. After a while, the couple just doesn't seem to be moving on. And why is this taking so long? And such is going through much worse suffering. So why aren't you? Well, this is less than helpful. Everybody has their own pace. Everybody has their journey. God has his plan. And perhaps this couple is just taking a very long time, and perhaps until the rest of their lives. I hope not, but that might be. And it's not for me to determine when they should be at this new spot where it will be easier. So I'm not there to tell them why they're suffering infertility. I'm there to be a Simon of Cyrene to them and help them carry this cross. And if I do that, I will have done a real, true work of mercy and help them along.
And that's interesting to hear. A lot of people think, I think it's particularly true of men, just being there, I'm not doing anything. I'm just there.
Yeah, I know. It's really hard. And that's also what's part of the struggle of the couple. The woman and the man are dealing with this suffering very differently. And if you don't pay attention, then on top of this big suffering, you have a marriage crisis on your hands, which is the last thing you want. But I think it's very important for the couple to work through it, to talk through it, and to realize that the other is processing things very differently. So for the husband, I'd say it's very important for him to realize, I can't do anything. This is tremendously frustrating for me, but by listening, by allowing my wife to cry on my shoulder, I am really helping her. And it may seem that we're going over the same ground again and again, but if that's what she needs, and if I can take it, everybody needs a break, maybe you can take it, then you're doing a tremendous job towards your wife. This is just wonderful. And as a wife, I'd say, be aware of how difficult this is for your husband. He would love to fix it. He can't. And he may be suffering just as much as you are, but he's not able to express it. And perhaps he doesn't even want to talk about it, which is okay too. Respect his wish, but show him that if he wants to talk about it, if he wants to cry on your shoulder, then that's fine too. And tell to the other what you need. So often it's so helpful to have your spouse come along with you to the doctor's appointments, sitting in the waiting room with all these other women who are heavily pregnant and you're not, and you're getting another bit of bad news of why this is not working out. Well, tremendous thing for the husband to be there and help her through this. Or if the doctor is pushing IVF on you and you're already in a very weak position emotionally, then having your husband there as your protector is tremendous. So there's lots that can be done. And if you feel that you're going into crisis mode, go and see a good priest, go and see a Christian counselor. Don't let this become a major crisis.
Just a quick note before we return. If you would like to stay up to date on LifeSite's coverage of the latest life, family, and culture news, subscribe to one of our many newsletters by going to lifesitenews.com/subscribe. And if you'd like to help us bring our truth-telling coverage to millions around the world, please consider making a one-time or monthly donation at give.lifesitenews.com. And now, back to the video. So, you mentioned IVF, and I think most of the world thinks this is the panacea solution for any infertility problem. Tell us about IVF. Why do you say that you shouldn't use it?
Yeah, it's so sad, John, isn't it? Because that is offered to couples as the only solution almost. You've got a problem, well, let's just do IVF and you'll have a baby. Well, first of all, that's not true. Though things are better now than they were, let's say 10, 20 years ago, in terms of the technology, you still only have a 36% rate. So about 1/3 of a chance to have a baby in your arms after having gone through a grueling process. Even people who are fine with it, otherwise ethically, nobody says this is like a walk in the park. It's terrible for the woman, for the hormones that she needs to take, the retrieval of the eggs, for the husband to masturbate in the room, probably watching porn, which in itself goes so much against his dignity, his marriage, the child they're trying to conceive. And then ultimately also for the child, what a terrible thing to be conceived in a lab. And if you read the witnesses of adults who were conceived as children in this situation, they say how painful it is for them to think that they were conceived in a lab and that their fate was decided by technicians. What a difference to being conceived in the loving and hopefully loving embrace of your parents, safely nestled in the womb of your mother from the beginning, rather than having technicians then decide, well, this one looks good. I guess that will survive. This one we're going to discard. Doesn't look good. These we're going to freeze. No wonder that many of them are experiencing survivor's guilt, because why were they chosen and not their siblings? They must prove themselves, or they just throw up their arms in despair and go into depression. Things is just too heavy of a burden to bear. So this is just sort of giving just a little taste of what is associated with all of us. But why is the church against this? Well, as I was trying already to point out, it goes against the dignity of the child and of the couple and of their marriage. And, we are so sensitive today about what a child needs. We sing to our children in the womb. We make sure that we're not undergoing any shock, any trauma, because we know how sensitive the child is. And somehow its conception is not relevant. We're turning the child into a commodity, and the child is always a gift. And the difficulty about a gift is that we cannot force it. And it's terribly hard to understand, why sometimes this is not working out. But we're not doing anybody any favor by sort of forcing it and thereby actually sinning grievously against the child. Even though, once the child is there, of course we should love it. And I'm sure that lots of IVF parents are wonderful parents, leaving aside the nature of the conception. I think the real kind of medical method that should help them is one that helps them have a child naturally, not replace them, which is what IVF is doing. They're just, producing the child on the side and implanting it in the woman and hoping it's going to stick. That's the thing, everybody, I think even those who go for IVF, for IVF, sorry, would much rather just have a child the natural way. And there are other methods, like I think the by now well-known Dr. Hilges with his Creighton method, NAPR technology, who has a much higher success rate than IVF and who tries to heal the couple. So I think the church is wrongly interpreted as putting burdens on us just for the heck of making our lives harder. On the contrary, it's trying to show us the laws of life, the path of life, and turning a child into a commodity, using another person in that way is just against that person's dignity and leaves tremendous wounds. I was very struck once when I read another testimony by an IVF conceived, now adult, who said, my mother was not willing to carry the suffering, and she's now passed it on to me. And in a way, I'd say it's even worse than that, because infertility, it's a natural tragedy. It's terrible. It's awful. It's like any kind of sickness that can really strike you and change your life for good. But there's no sin involved. It just happens. And my deciding that I wanted to do IVF to have my child means I'm instrumentalizing my child, and I am potentially inflicting a grievous wound on my child. Now, whether that manifests itself or not, I have de facto sinned against that child. Whether the child is aware of it or not, whether there are any repercussions along the way. And I think often there are, even if there are not as many studies out there as we would like, because it's simply not a very popular topic. But on the positive end, I'd say to people who are struggling with infertility and who don't have any kids so far, they can act as parents without having children, because what does a parent do? A parent wants the best for their children. And that means not doing anything dramatic that would grievously wound that child, that would be a sin against the child. So by deciding I'd rather not have a child than have it through IVF, I am actually acting like a parent. And God has made us tremendous promises about the sterile woman who will be the mother of many, and we don't know exactly what that will look like in the afterlife. But we know that God keeps his promises, and that somehow we will be having babies on our laps and be the parents of many. And that's a way of doing it, even if, unfortunately and heartbreakingly, you may not have this in this life.
Now, as you mentioned there, Dr. Hilger's various technologies that assist with reproduction, but natural reproduction. In other words, the child is still conceived in that marital union between the husband and wife, are actually more successful than IVF. But to the great shame of much of the medical community, it's not offered. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, I've heard Dr. Hilger speak about it, also at a Vatican conference, and saying that really, in terms of success rates, we're not better off now than we were in the 50s. It's simply that the whole industry has gone full steam into this one technology, mainly IVF, and hasn't looked at anything else. And it's a tremendous industry. That means there's a lot of money involved in this. So it's really a big plus for the doctors who are involved in this. And so they don't have much reason to look anywhere else. And so Dr. Hilgers is sidelined, and you hear about him more sort of in pro-life circles and Catholic circles. But he made some tremendous discoveries. He found out that women who have endometriosis, even if they have just a little bit of endometriosis, that can influence their fertility significantly, and that needs to be taken care of. And he's developed a method of doing that surgically, which is now so sophisticated that it doesn't leave any scars anymore. And he's been able to help so many couples. And he's developed also something for the infertility of men. So he's just looking at it holistically. And going for treatment for infertility is never easy, even if you go this kind of route, but you feel you're treated as a person and your dignity is being respected. And, he's doing his best. And he's just been the means of bringing about so many babies the natural way.
Mm-hmm. One of the things that people don't talk about much is suffering and how to endure suffering. And if you could get into that, I know you talk about that in your book. I thought that was fascinating.
Suffering, mourning, it sounds so negative, but that was one of the dead ends that I reached. I thought, well, we have to be courageous. That's being heroic. That's being virtuous. And I didn't realize that by trying to be too courageous in a sense, or courageous at the cost of mourning, I was preventing myself from actually accepting this cross, from grieving properly, from being able, therefore, to go through this journey and not getting stuck on it. Because mourning means I'm allowing myself to face this sadness, and it can be overwhelming. At the same time, trying all the time to run away from it, being by trying to be courageous, throwing myself into work, as important as it is to, go on with your life and not just sit at home and mope. It is very important, I think, to allow oneself to grieve. And this is just generally known today. People who go through any kind of loss nowadays would realize that they have to grieve. And infertility has been compared to experiencing the death of a child. It's just a child you've never met, you've never had in your arms, who's perhaps never been conceived. And it's just as heartbreaking. And so we don't expect parents who, let's say, just lost their 3-year-old to sort of skip and jump through life. And nor should we expect that from ourselves who are experiencing infertility. So I think we need to be aware that again and again, we will have moments where we really need to cry our heart out, go to our spouse, go to a close friend, go to a priest, go to Christ in the Eucharist, and know that he is there with us. What really helped me was reading about Mother Teresa's spirituality and her talking about the thirst of Christ for us, and the thirst for that this dark part of our hearts or our souls, where we feel it's just too painful for him to go in, either because it's sinful or painful or both. And Mother Teresa called those are inner Calcuttas, and Christ is desiring tremendously to enter those, and because he's the only one who ultimately can heal them. Other human beings can go in to a certain point through love, but only Christ who knows us inside out, can go that deep. And so to allow him to come in and heal us I found it very, very powerful. And also giving yourself time. So, I was speaking about compassion. So patience has to do with suffering. It has to do with mourning. And therefore, just taking also one step at a time. When I would think, what is it going to be like, to be infertile in 2 years, 3 years, 10 years, being old, it was too much. It was just driving me crazy. I couldn't bear that. Also, because we're not given the grace now for how it's going to be in 30 years. We're given the grace for now. And so when I realized, no, all I have to do is accept the infertility for this moment, just for this moment, not even for tomorrow, just for now. Somehow that made it possible, because before that it was like, well, I have to accept that I'm not ever going to have any children, and I can't say yes to that. I want children desperately. So no, God is not asking me to do that. He asks me to say yes to it just for now. And I thought that was tremendously helpful. I don't know, I'm sure you've heard about this wonderful Italian woman, Chiara Colbella, who died like 10 years ago at the age of 27. And she had a very tragic history. She got married young. Her first child was severely handicapped. She found out while she was expecting and was going to die soon after birth. And she and her husband, of course, decided against abortion. They had the child, they baptized it, they loved it for 2 hours, and then it died. And then she got pregnant again, and the same thing happened, completely different condition. And again, and each time they thought they would be completely heartbroken, and they were, but at the same time, we were surprised at how much inner joy they were felt. This is, of course, a grace. It's not something you kit yourself for. God sometimes lets some go through dark night of the soul, like Mother Teresa, with no joy, no experience, sense of experience of joy, and others like Chiara and her husband, they were given this grace. And then when she was expecting a third time, she developed the kind of cancer that only old men who smoked all their lives get. And she never smoked, and she was a young woman, and she didn't want to put the child at risk. And so she didn't take any treatment that would hurt the child. And then she gave birth to the child and got treatment, but she died within a year. And as she was dying, her husband said, you know, Christ says that our cross is light. Do you think the cross is light? And she says, oh, it's dolce. The cross is sweet. And he said they were able to do this by doing piccoli passi, doing little steps every day, just taking on what was expected of them and not more. And thereby they were able to climb a spiritual Mount Everest. And I'm pretty sure she's going to be canonized. And I think her husband is not far behind her in holiness, but he's still alive, so we can't canonize him yet. But these people are so inspiring, you know, as we're struggling through our dark night of the soul, and perhaps God isn't giving us these kind of graces, but He's with us just as much.
A lot of people, when they hear about infertility, they speak right away about adoption. How does that figure in?
You know, again, it's not something you just should bring up with the infertile couple, because it's a vocation as well. And not every couple suffering from infertility feels called to this in the first place. And some have to learn that. I had friends, they tried to adopt 5 times, and every time it fell through. Like at the last minute, suddenly the mother decided differently. So it was tremendous suffering for them. You know, first the infertility, then not working out, and then eventually they figured out that God was calling them to something else. So in a way, it feels a little bit, when people bring that up, like they're trying to sideline you to, you know, step away from your pain. And again, they're just trying to find a solution, which, sure, I mean, adopting is a wonderful thing to do, and a lot of couples are so happy to have adopted children whom they love just as much as they would their biological children. But you know, every couple, even those that have adopted, would have loved to go through pregnancy and give birth to their child. And adoption doesn't replace that. So again, it's something I would not bring up. And, you know, guess what? I think the couple is thinking about it themselves.
Mm-hmm. What do you make? There are probably a good number of young women today who talk about, I never, ever want to get pregnant. Those who say, I don't want to get pregnant because that would be a harm to the environment, or why would I ever get pregnant? That's just horrible. What's your thought on them?
Wow. It's sad, isn't it? Terrible. I think they've just been given the wrong model, haven't they, for too long? I mean, they've been fed the lie that, you know, success in their job is the meaning of life. In a way, that's how they imagine themselves. That's presented as, you know, the happy woman is the one who's successful. Everybody admires her. And they take admiration for love. And often only when it's too late do they realize that it's not the same, and they've passed childbearing age. So I think, and because there's so few examples now of women around with children, and they often see them as, well, those are the ones who are stuck at home. Well, I mean, there are lots of women who do work and have children, so it is possible, even though, yes, it is harder. And if success is the most important thing in your life, then a child will make things harder for you. But I think women are really by nature so tuned in to personal relationships. I mean, Edith Stein makes that clear. They're more like the men. And why do they want to be successful? Because they think that way they will get the love they're craving. You know, it's an ersatz, it's a replacement for. So if they took a little bit of time to think about it, well, what do they really want? You know, you always end that mad goose chase of, you know, getting through college, getting the best grades, getting the best job, and, you know, and each time you get that and you realize it's not enough, well, guess what? That's just going to continue. Do you really want to continue that rat race? And what do you really want? Well, if you really want love, then love comes by giving love. And, you know, John Paul II was so wonderful in explaining how we're really made for love. And whatever our calling is, whether it's marriage or the religious life or the single life in some way, we're always called to give for self. So if happiness is what you want, then that's the route you need to choose. But it's true that young women just need to see more women who are happy at being mothers. Sure, they're tired and they have their issues like everybody else. But boy, do I know a lot of women who are so happy at being mothers. And I, you know, after 9 years, I finally had a baby, my husband and I decided to stop teaching full time at university. And, you know, on one level that was hard. And on the other, I'm so glad, and I wouldn't want to miss it, you know? it could never cover that. My job could never cover that emptiness of not having a child in arms.
Wow. Wow, wow. Dr. Marie Meaney, thank you so much for being us. Where can people find your book?
So it's Emmaus has published it, so you can get it from their website, and then the usual suspects like Amazon, of course, so I don't like to promote them. But Emmaus, yes, is the place to go to.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Dr. Marie Meaney, thank you so much for being with us, and God bless you.
God bless. Thank you, John-Henry.
And God bless all of you. And we'll see you next time. Every single day, there are new developments in the culture war. You need to stay on top of the news from the front lines around the world. At LifeSite, it's actually our mission to serve you the truth on life, faith, family, and freedom so that you can be an effective soldier for Christ. Subscribe now and never miss an important development in the culture war that you need to know about, all from a faithful Catholic perspective. And check out the links below to get involved with our reporting and our pro-life partners. Thank you and God bless you.